Afternoon. Welcome to the session The Future of Food at the Digital Discourses, organized by Goethe-Institut Indonesian, Center for Digital Society and Engaged Media. My name is Firdausi. I am a junior researcher at the Center for Indonesian Policy Studies, and I will be your moderator for this session. With the growing population, high rates of consumption, and the effects of climate change, more sustainable food production is needed to feed billions in the future. That brings us to some questions. What are some of the some of the sustainable alternatives to our food? And can science and technology provide food security and save our planet? In the next hour, we will be discussing this question with Dr. Wong Ming from Shiok. Good afternoon, Dr. Wong.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. And in the next 1 hour, I would like to share with all of you what is cultivated meat and how it is related to the future of the food. Yeah.
Okay,
so without further ado, is there any other things, Sarah?
Yes. Before we welcome Dr. Wong to the floor, I would also like to invite all of you to type the questions that you may have at any point during the discussion in the Q&A box. And we will have time afterwards for a Q&A, and we will try our best to answer all of your questions as long as the time permits. And that being said, now, Dr. Wong, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Sarah. So let's begin the sessions now, and let me bring you to the first slide. And we start with talking about what is the future of food. So to me, I think there are many ways we can define what we can imagine about the future of food, about like how sustainable the food productions can be, whether it can have enough supplies to everyone to feed the ever-growing populations. And to address it in a simple way, I would like to bring your attention to terms called food security index, where it's terms used by the economists to define how secure or how well is the food, how secure is the food for a particular country. So on the right-hand side, you can see that they actually graded different countries in terms of their food security index, and among them, Finland is actually one of the highest scorer. And how they score is based on 4 parameters. So it based on 4, first is affordability. So it looks at how affordable is the food supplies to everyone in different class of the country. So this involves like different political or geopolitical policy to keep the price of the food under control, including the subsidy from governments and funding to adjust the income of different classes. So that is the first parameter that people are looking at, how secure is the food supply. So secondly is the supply chain and availability. So in this class of the assessment, we will look at how diversified is the food supplies within a country, whether it's the certain class of food are importing or producing just locally or importing just from a single source of country. So other than that, we are also looking at whether there's any local food production capability within the country, and then also to look at whether it is susceptible to disruptions in the supply chains, especially like, example, what we have recently been through during the COVID period. If let's say there's a shutdown in a borders line, is there disruptions to the supplies of the food? So the top parameter we are looking at is at the natural resource and resilience. So in this parameter, we are looking at how sustainable is the process of food productions. So for example, whether the process of producing the food is involving any disruptions to the environment, like overfishing or deforestation. And also, we are also trying to look at how's the carbon footprint during the food production process. And within this class, also, we are trying to understand, is there any alternative way or new way, the innovation way to produce the food? And lastly, the food security or the future of food also revolve around the quality, safety, and the nutrition of the food. So this involving like how we can label the food, whether they are correct label and then in correct informs to the consumer. And then in terms of food safety, whether they are really well characterized or well analyzed before it's distributed to the market. So like, for example, any quality test on the antibiotic of the pesticide left over within the food. So all in all, these all different parameters constitute into the food security index, whereby we can use it to define the future of the food. Yeah. So let me bring you to the next slide. I would like to share with you two keywords of what I think about what we can do to secure the food security and also to address the future of the food. So the two keywords are innovations and efficiency. In terms of the innovations, it regards a lot of like how where we can produce the food, what we can produce, and how we grow. So for example, this will lead to the key of today's seminar, where I'm going to show you the technology of cultivated meat as it is a very innovative way of how we can produce meat for consumption purpose. So secondly is revolving around efficiency. So with the limited amount of resources in the environment, how we can increase the efficiency to produce a food is also very important. So it involves like comparing the inputs versus the output of food productions. So at the first step, maybe we can look at like with the same amount of land, water, and energy, whether we can produce more food using the same amount of input. And in the longer run, with the innovations way of producing food, we can even look at like with a lesser input of the resources and looking at a higher output of the food productions. Yep. So this in this slide, I'm going to show with you what is a cultivated meat and how it can address back to the food security, and then also how it can become the future of food. So cultivated meat is a technology where we try to produce the meat for human consumption purpose using cell-based technology. And in fact, there are a lot of companies around the world that have been founded and using this technology to produce different kind of meat. And for me, I'm a scientist from the company called Shiok, which I'm going to introduce later in the sessions. But now we will talk more about how's the technology working. So for our company, we are working with the meat from crustacean species, which is the shrimp, crab, and lobster. And then the process actually began with the isolations of stem cells from a healthy animal. If I can, I would like to zoom in slightly to the, sorry, I think I cannot zoom into a slide, but if you can see the process from the top, it starts from getting the stem cells from crustaceans. It can be from any other animal, but for our company, we are focusing on crustaceans. So stem cells is the cells that is found in the body with the properties to be able to regenerate, to repair the injured tissue, or to replace the aging tissues. And these cells that can replicate or multiply infinitely with the properties called as pluripotence. And with that, we are trying to get this kind of stem cell from the animals and then culture it in vitro environment. For example, in this case, in the second step of the figure, you can see that the cells in red color, they are kept in a culture dish. And to keep these cells alive in an artificial environment or the in vitro environments, we actually need to supply them with the optimal nutrients. And this optimal nutrients comes in the liquid form. And it consists of different basic nutrients like sugar, amino acids, some of the protein peptides, vitamins, mineral. All in all, they provide a environment similar to how the cells are growing inside animal bodies. So with this, the cells can continue to grow and increase in number, where you can see they enter the proliferation stage. So from a single dish, they can actually expand their number into a larger flask and eventually into the bioreactor, showing in a different size of tank over here. So once we have enough cells number, or what we call the biomass, what we're going to do is we will turn the cells, the stem cells, into its designated mature stage, where in this case, we are trying to turn the stem cell into the muscle cells. a process known as differentiation. So these muscle cells resemble the meat that is found on the animal body, and we can harvest it from the tank and then separate from the liquid nutrient that is growing. And then this meat can then be prepared into different dishes and then thus serving to human for consumption purposes. And for our case in the Shiok technology, it's an accidental and very interesting discovery that in the process of differentiation, the cells not only turns into the meat, but the liquid nutrients that is growing actually also have the crustaceans or the what we call the seafood flavor. So by harvesting the liquid nutrients, we are trying to reduce the waste from the production process, and instead we're converting it into seasoning powder, a dried form of the liquid nutrients. And this seasoning powder can then be used into preparing other dishes as well. So over here, you can see like, as compared to conventional way of getting the meat, whereby we need to slaughter the animals, the cultivated meat technology is innovations way of what we can grow, where we can grow, and how we can grow. So in terms of where we can grow, this technology doesn't have to be set up as in a farm environment, because as you can see, they grow in an in vitro environments, and thus the cell culture plate and the cell culture flask, as long as they are kept in a clean facility, they can actually grow in any part of the world. And then secondly, in terms of what we grow, using the stem cells, we are converting the cells into muscle. So in the process, the cells are not growing into any other body parts that is not consumed by human, for example, the bones and the shell of the crustaceans. So in terms of like energy efficiency, it is actually much more efficient, whereby we use you will use less energy because the cells no longer need to use the energy to be transformed into any body parts that is not consumed. And lastly is how we grow. The technology itself, as I have presented over here, is using the stem cell technology. And this technology is not something new in the human history, but it is something new that we have trying to use the technology for food production purpose. Previously, these stem cell technology are mostly used for pharma and biomedical purposes, whereby stem cells are used to grow into other tissues type and organs to cure the patients. But then using the same technology, we can also use the cells to convert them into muscle and then thus use for human consumptions for the meat purposes. Yeah. So next is just to re-emphasize of how cultivated meat can help to improve the food security and thus acting as one of the options to be the future of the food. Firstly, it is able to diversify and be the alternative meat sources, and this address to the one of the parameter of the food security index. So over here, the cultivated meat is actually here to provide as an alternative options, but not to replace the main source of the protein like the normal meats, but as any other things in the menu, it just add another options for us in case if let's say one day the normal shrimp meats are the supplies are got disrupted during any kind of pandemic event, then at least there is alternative options for us to still get a source of proteins. Yep. So in another way, it helps to improve the food security. So in the second point, the cultivated meats can also help to reinforce the supply chain. So as mentioned, the production plants for the cultivated meat can be set up in any part of the world, especially for example, we no longer need to import the seafood or any kind of the meat from another country, but to produce it locally. And of course, if we are looking at the scale right now, maybe the scale that we can provide from a local productions might not be able to fulfill the requirement from the whole country, but in another way, it as a temporary food reservoir during the time of crisis. And this actually in line with the visions of Singapore, where our country is founded in. called the 30 by 30 visions, whereby Singapore is trying to reach 30% of food productions by local productions by the year of 2030. Yeah. Other than that, cultivated meat is also a sustainable way to produce the food. For example, like what I've mentioned, is what we grow during the process. We no longer need to produce the animal body parts that is not being consumed. In another way, we are trying to save the energy conversions during the food production process. Other than that, within this country, I believe many of the companies are striving hard to achieve the status of carbon footprint status, whereby, for example, our company has joined a carbon pricing leadership coalition, Singapore, to achieve less water, land, and electricity use during the food production process. So lastly, in terms of the food security, the cultivated meat can also address the safety and nutrition in parameter requirement by the food security index. So this is the step that our company are working hard to get the production process more regulated. And of course, we are talking with different regulatory bodies. And in Singapore, we are talking with Singapore Food Agency. And in US, definitely there will be a FDA to be regulate how we can label the nutrition of the cultivated meat, and then to be able to reach a market because it's a novel food. These are a lot of documentations we are trying hard to gather up to make sure the production process are well controlled, and then all the nutrition informations are correct label, and then to bring it the safe and correct label food to the consumers. So at this slide, I would like to bring up the times to introduce where I'm coming from. My company is called Shiok. It's a Singapore founded startup company since 2018. And then Shiok is the first cultivated crustacean company globally. And our mission is to bring delicious, sustainable, and healthy shrimp, lobster, and crab meats to the tables. And currently, so next slide. For some of the background of our company is founded by two scientists, Dr. Sandhya and Dr. Kai. Both of them are stem cell scientists, and they have decided to use their stem cells technology or the knowledge to be able to contribute to the food production process, and that's why that's how our company has been founded. And right now, our company is about 50 to 60 people in place. And we consist of different professionals, including the management, financial, scientists, engineer, and etc. So the picture showing over here is saying that there are 32 of people in our company. It's actually captured last year, November. And this shows that how rapidly we are spending since then. Yep. And over here, I just want to show with you that the cultivated meat is not just theory, but actually we have achieved and able to produce it in a prototype form. Since our founding in 2018 August, over the 3 years, we actually come out with 3 prototypes. On the first year, we come out with the cultivated shrimp meat prototype in the form of siu mai, or the Chinese dumpling, and in the second year, we have used the cultivated lobster and prepare it into different lobster dishes. And lastly, is from the last year, whereby we have used the cultivated crab meat to prepare into other dishes, for example, the crab cake and chili crab, and along with the shrimp tom yum soup and lobster chips. And this prototype have been launched and been tested by some of the invited guests during a private testing event. So right now, as of 2022, we are not only based in Singapore, but we are also expanded our footprint to Thailand, Vietnam, and also Sydney, Australia. The purpose of expanding this to different countries is not only to not to achieve the production scale, but is to set up the lab that is closer to the animal of interest of local species, because over this country, they are rich in biodiversity of different crustacean species, whereby we are actually very interested to obtain the stem cell from this animal and then use it to produce the cultivated meat. And this is also a great milestone that we have achieved over the last year. And this is a mini production plant that is set up in Singapore itself to have the capability to produce the meat up to 200 liters of the bioreactor tank. And this is officially launched by the Minister of Sustainability and Environment, Ms. Grace Fu. Yep. And right now, this is our timeline. As you can see, over the first few years, we are actually achieving our primary research and then over the benchtop level. And what we are trying to do now is to do the upscaling process and also to get the regulatory approval from the local regulatory bodies. And our aim is to get the commercializations done by 2024. And our mode of distributing our cultivated meat right now, based on internal decisions, we are going to go for business-to-business model, whereby the cultivated shrimp meat is produced will be distributed to the restaurants, high-end restaurants, whereby they can help us to prepare into different dishes and then eventually reach the consumer. And later on, only we are targeting to go into a retail mode to sell the shrimp meats to general public. So lastly, just to share with everyone some of the challenges during the productions of cultivated meat. Although it's very ideal and innovative way, but we have faced a lot of technical challenges, and this will require a lot of R&D process. And worry not about this, because we are working hard with the research team to get the meat to be produced at a scalable production rate, and then also to achieve the cost parity. And then, of course, despite of the technological challenge, another aspect to look at is the consumer acceptance. So if let's say we are ready to serve the cultivated meat to the general public, whether the general public are ready to have it as their normal diet, or is there any other concern that they might have? So as a marketing approach for in-house, our marketing team has actually conducted a survey locally in Singapore and also at Hong Kong. And it's very lucky to find that actually both the citizens from this country, both the people from this country, they are very willing to try out the cell-based or the cultivated meat. And other initiatives also have been done to educate the publics about the different aspects of the cultivated meat. For example, we have done over 100 times of different events to spread the information regarding cultivated meat, including like some of the roadshow and library. And also we sometimes have the visit from different university students at our facility. And we also attend different seminars. For example, also like today, the conference, to share about the information, to educate the public about how cultivated meat is produced and whether they are safe and safe for consumption, and to address all the concerns that might have arisen regarding this new technology. So lastly, just to share that since we are founded in Singapore, and why we have selected Singapore as our first base to start at is because that over in Singapore is actually a very supporting environment from the environments, whereby you can see that Singapore actually is the first country to approve the cultivated meat to be commercially selling. And then also over here, there are they are also the first university to set up the course from alternative protein to generate the talents required by the industry. And then there are, of course, different kind of fundings and accelerator opportunities and the grants available to support the R&D event. So these are a few policy or policy or the initiative coming out by the governments to support the innovations in food productions and thus to achieve the visions of food security. And lastly, to sum up this seminar, I just want to recap that what I've shared. Cultivated meats are actually alternative proteins that reinforce the meat supply chain. It's not here to replace how meat is produced, but just an alternative option. And of course, comparing of how it can be produced any part of the world, and then thus it enhance the local food productions, and it's an innovative way to help to enhance the food security. And I hope with this sharing, you will be able to understand more about cultivated meat. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer the questions during the Q&A sessions. And thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Wong. It was a very insightful presentation. I myself just now learning about cultivated meats. And if I may to highlight some of the key takeaways from your presentation today is that cultivated meats could help enhancing food security with diversifying and as an alternatives, and also it could reinforce the meat supply chain, and it also in line with the sustainable food production in terms of the managing the carbon footprint, and it as well as it's also safe and nutritious. And you also mentioned some of the challenges that are Shiok meats now facing is the technology development and the consumer acceptance. And yeah, before we go to Q&A session, I haven't seen any questions from the audience, so I would like to invite our audience here. If you have any burning questions while we have our expert here, please do drop them in the Q&A box or the chat box in the Zoom. But while we are waiting for that, I do have one question that you mentioned in your presentation that one of the aspects of food security is the food affordability. And I believe that is also in line with the food accessibility as well. And you mentioned that one of the challenge of the cultivated meat is also in the technology in regards of the production cost, right? And how do you see this in the future? How would you tackle the challenge, and how could cultivated meats become more affordable? Yeah, I think that's my question.
Yes, thank you, Sarah, for the question. So I will break the questions down into maybe smaller ones. And if I didn't address any of it, please raise the questions again. So first of all, I would say you're asking how will I see if cultivated meat can be a cost-effective way in the food production process. Yeah. So I would say that currently, I think some of us might aware and some might not know that cost of cultivated meat is an concern of how we can launch it to the market right now. So for right now, we are going to have definitely most costly, have to pay higher rate to get the cultivated meat to enjoy these proteins. But how will I see it in the future is with the increase in demands and more productions in scale, this will definitely brings down the cost by different fold change. But of course, there are other ways to address it, which is in terms of the technology development. So looking at the process of to produce cultivated meat, the meat itself is coming from stem cells. So we can look at it in this way. If the cells can grow faster to achieve the greater biomass in a shorter period of time, so in another way, we can reduce the cost to produce it. And then in another aspect is to produce the meat, we actually need the culture media to support the self-growth. So this cultural media, for right now, there are different versions of it. And for R&D purposes, many companies has been using the pharma grade of raw material to support the cell culture, cell growth in vitro environments. But in a longer runs, because at the end of the day, this product is meant for food and human consumptions. So it's not longer require a medical grade or a pharma grade of raw materials. So over there, it actually can, if we can shift from a pharma grade materials to a food grade material, it can also greatly reduce the cost of input. Yeah, so there are so many different aspects where we can target it to, and all, it will help us to reduce the cost. But right now, it is fact that cultivated meat is more costly compared to conventional meat. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. And I apologize. Actually, we do have some questions from in the Q&A box, but I think my question earlier already covered some of the questions. We do have one here is from anonymous attendee. How would you overcome promoting meat alternatives as something that can provide the same nutrient as normal meats? So if I may rephrase that, I think does lab-grown meat contain the same nutrition as the real meat? I think that's what the question is mean.
Okay, thanks Sarah for the questions, and also thanks for the anonymous questions. To address the questions, let's look at how the cultivated meat are produced. So it involves the growing of the cells in an in vitro environment and eventually converting the stem cells to its final stage, final desired stage, which is the muscle. So what we are trying to do is to mimic how the cells are growing within the animal body. So the cells won't grow if we don't provide them with the optimal nutrient or the correct type of nutrients. So for the R&D process, we actually look at what is the nutrients that the cells will require to grow when they are in the animal body. And by understanding that, we supply in an artificial way. So for example, as a basic one, we know that cells will require sugar and amino acids for the energy source and also the building block to expand in their in the cell size. So these are the simple nutrients that we can provide them even in the artificial environments, and then they can continue to grow. And eventually, by understanding how the cells can convert from original state to the final stage, we stimulating it in a similar way. And thus, the muscle cells that we harvest at the end of the process actually is almost the same as how the muscles are harvested from the animal bodies. And in terms of the nutrition, of course, we cannot use just by the extrapolations of our understanding. To get the regulatory clearance, we actually need to do different type of nutritional analysis and to show that actually that these cultivated meat are similar or similar to how the normal meats are being available in the markets. So I would say that if the cultivated meat are able to be commercialized, it has been well studied and also well controlled by the regulatory bodies. So there is no need to have too much of concern of whether it's nutritious or not, because everything will be labeled correctly. And like any other food that you get from the shelf, all the nutritional value will be labeled. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that is an excellent point. And also, I think we could also draw the line to answer some of the burning questions here. A lot of our attendees are asking, so can the cultivated meat considered to be a vegetarian or vegan? What do you think, Dr. Wong? Is it vegan?
Yeah. So I think we have to bring back the same explanation again, because it's using the cells from the animals and eventually produce like how the muscles are present in the animal body. So cultivated meat, unlike the plant-based meat, they are not vegetarian or vegans. So they are still considered the real animal meat, just it is produced without the need to slaughter of animals. So if let's say someone has choose to become a vegan or vegetarian due to the reason of ethical, because they don't want to harm the animals to be able to enjoy the meat, then this will be an alternative or options for them to start having meat into their diets.
Okay, great. And there are two questions addressing the carbon footprint. The first one is from Christine Aikati, and the second one is from Crisanti Delvia. And I think they are asking, what is the carbon footprint and environmental cost, and more generally, of cultivated meat compared to animal meat and compared to protein-rich pulses? And the other one asking, can you please explain more about how is the carbon footprint working, as we know that livestock production has negative influence on GHG emissions? Thanks. Yeah, so I think they are asking if
yes,
the greenhouse
okay. I will try to answer it in a general way because me myself, I'm not very expert in how can we define the carbon footprint of the food production process. But in generally, to determine the carbon footprints, study when they to carry out the study, they will look at how much of water, land, electricity being used, and then also look at how much of carbon dioxide being emitted, and then maybe some of the greenhouse gases. So in comparison to conventional way of farming, of course, I don't have actual data to show over here, but I think it would be good to refer to institute called the Goethe-Institut. They actually conduct a very thorough study to compare the carbon footprint of a cultivated meat industry compared to a conventional one. So if you look at how much space we require to produce the meat, it actually will require much lesser land, and then just like how we can use just a very minimal amount of energy to convert the cells to muscle without spending more energy to grow the whole animal itself, whereby most of the body parts are being thrown away. So in this way, actually the energy conversion process is actually much more efficient. But the actual number figures, I think you still need to refer to more well-known bodies to get it. Yeah, but this is how in a general way of how I can share with you.
So it's like cutting the process by
not like to make it more lean. But yes.
Okay, that's interesting. And this is also another question from Himawan Fatoni. I noticed that the roadmap is toward the availability at premium restaurant by 2024. First question, how long does it take to be available for mass market? And the second question, is it possible to market it as a cloud kitchen model, whereby there will be labs and stores at different places with the real lab?
Yes, I think this is a very good question. And to address the first question, how long does it take to available to mass market? This will depend on the production scale that can be achieved by the individual companies. So for example, right now, not only our production scale, also like how fast we can get the regulatory clearance in each of the country. So like I presented, the Singapore is the only country and the first country that have approved the commercial sales of cultivated meat. And then I believe that US and some of the Southeast Asian country are catching up to catch up with the regulatory process. But then this whole thing is going to take time. I would say that in 1 or 2 years time is minimum, because even for us, if you look at our timeline, we are aiming to get the regulatory clearance with a 1-year timeline. And then even with that clearance, then it comes to the second question, how large scale can we produce? And also the third question is how big is the market demands? So we can't like actually produce too much if the market acceptance rate is too low, right? And then all these questions, I guess it will be to be addressed at a later stage because not only because it is hard to predict for now, and also it's out of my expertise. Yeah, for me, I'm the scientist that is working with the culture media. So our focus is to make sure the cultural media is as cost effective as possible, so that at the end of the day, the cultivated meat will be affordable, and then also to make sure the media itself is nutritious enough to sustain the growth of the cells. So the faster the cell can grow, then it can also reduce the cost of productions. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is, we can say that this is the first step towards a secure food system.
Yeah. And then second questions that Fatoni has raised out is whether there is possibility of cloud kitchen model. So I guess this is something like if I understand correctly, is asking whether we can set up the productions at different where do I just left? At different place, as in like a coffee machines to produce the meat in any restaurants. This is something very futuristic, but definitely within I would say a marketing strategy in the future. But as of now, I think the first questions have to be addressed before we can move to the second one. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wong. And there are still 3 questions left. I think we can start from the most, okay, this one. Can we only create meat, or the technology can be used for others, like creating palm oil, because palm industry is damaging to the environment? What do you think? Do you have any response to this question?
Yes, I think for the cultivated or the stem cell technology it can be used to produce not only meat but also other body parts of animals. For example, the fats or the cartilage of the animal, if that is of any commercial value. But then in terms of like to create the palm oil is a totally different kind of system already, because the palm oil itself is not produced using the stem cells. So I can't really address this question over here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, another one about the cost. If people in the lower middle class already find it difficult to eat meat due to cost issues, does the presence of lab-grown food actually not make eating meat more expensive? Yeah.
The presence of lab-grown actually no. So it's asking because the cultivated meat is costly at the moment, so it's not actually providing a solutions for the lower middle class to be able to enjoy the meat source, right? So I guess this is something in the long run. So if let's say we can be able to achieve the production skill and bring down the cost of a cultivated meat much lower than the normal meats, then definitely this is a solution to provide the middle class or the lower class people to be able to enjoy the meat. But as of now, because of the constraint in different aspect, I would say that cultivated meat is at right now this step we are trying to make the theory or futuristic idea to be able to achieve at a real life first before we can to say that it can provide solutions for longer runs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I might have a follow-up questions to that actually. Do you see the same nature also goes to the countries with more lower food security index? Such as if we were talking about Singapore, it's pretty developed, but now we are reflecting to Indonesia. We have a lot of areas that are still have the food insecurity. So do you see that it can also help these problems as well in the future?
Yes, I think it is not only targeting in any of just single aspect. So although it's hard to say that it can achieve the affordability as of now, but in the future, hopefully we can achieve a lower price, and thus it can help to improve the food security in terms of the first aspect of affordability. And secondly is how we can enhance the local community to have alternative source of proteins in their diet is to set up the productions of cultivated meat at this particular area, especially in areas that is very remote, whereby to get access to an external source of protein is very hard. And this is definitely one way to how we can help to improve the food security index. And then in terms of like others, I would say that there are so many ways the cultivated meat can do, but at this moment, I would say that it is a very first step where we can start to make the ideas to become a realistic stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wong. I think we have a good question here from another anonymous. The perceived unnaturalness of the lab-grown meat was a big factor of its rejection. What do you think about it? Especially if people are not familiar enough, how do they know whether it is safe to consume or not? Yeah, which you have.
Thanks for the questions. Yeah, I think this is something that we are trying to address in terms of like consumer acceptance. So without a proper way of educating the general public, definitely these are going to create concerns and even phobia towards cultivated meat, because even the terms lab-grown meat itself is something scary to hear already, because lab-grown people might associate it with chemicals and a lot of unnatural things. So one way we try to reduce the incorrect perceptions is actually now the industry, we are trying to move away from the terms called man-made meat or lab-grown meats already. And you see that in my presentations, I have repeatedly used the word cultivated meats. And then this will help to reduce the misperceptions. So secondly, what we are trying to do is trying to educate as many people as possible. And of course, as you can see that in Singapore, one approach is to include that the technology into the teaching syllabus so that more people can be aware of it. And then in terms of like, the more people know about it, then the lesser misperception will be around. So just to address whether it's safe to consume or not, like I mentioned, the production process actually try to mimic how the natural processes are occurring in the animal body. So whatever we are feeding to the cells is just some of the simple nutrients that can be found naturally, and they are available in food grades. So at the end of the process, the whatever that we are harvesting, they are safe to consume. And of course, with the different supporting documents that we are submitting to regulatory bodies, and this will definitely help to reduce some of the concerns as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, I am curious. After your explanation about the cultivated meat, I think a lot of our attendees here are also curious. Taste-wise, how does it taste? Is it taste similar to the regular meat, or how would you define it?
Yes, thank you. I think I would like to share this with everyone as well. So in terms of the test, they are, I will not say 100% the same, but if you have test something of a cultivated meat, then you'll be surprised that you can't differentiate whether it's a cultivated or a normal meat. That's the comments that we received from from all of our participants for the parrot testing event. And of course, if you look at how the production process, like I mentioned, it is mimicking how the muscles are growing in the animal body. And also, if you look at the Shiok technology, one of the interesting findings that we have discovered is that during the process of converting the stem cells into muscles, even the liquid nutrients itself have developed the shrimp's flavor. So just the liquid nutrient around it also has provided a very nice seafood seasoning. I hope this will help you to imagine how similar the end meat products and piece resemble to a normal meat. Yep.
Okay, that's actually really interesting. And we do have a good question here. what is the advantage of using stem cell technology for alternative protein compared to other technologies?
Compared to other technology, as in because there is no example of other technologies shown over here. So
maybe if our attendee here can elaborate more about what are the other technologies that we need to compare.
Maybe I can try to answer it if I can. So cultivated technology is to use the stem cells to produce the meat. So there are other approach to produce meat. For example, there are companies that are using plant-based technology, whereby they are using plant material that resemble the taste of the meat, and then they pull them together and prepare into the meat-like product. So those are what we call the plant-based meat, and it is actually considered vegetarian or vegans because there's no animal cells involved in the production process. But for cultivated meat, one distinct way to differentiate is we are using the cells from animals, and the end product itself is considered still animal products.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers the questions. And okay, we have another one. I think you have mentioned this earlier, but I will read the question. How do you imagine this lab-grown meat industry to scale in the future? Will we have a few companies dominating in one region like Southeast Asia to produce and export the meat to various countries? Could this be redistributed to smaller companies? Yeah, what do you think, Dr. Wong?
Thanks for the questions, but I think I will answer these questions in my personal opinion, so it doesn't represent the opinions from shop meats. Okay, yeah. So I would say that one reason for us to develop the cultivated meat technology is to able to produce the food locally and to skip the process of importing and exporting meat, and thus reducing the risk of supply chain disruptions. So of course, in a commercial point of view, the company will more likely to set up different production plants locally, and thus to have a greater market share. But in terms of like dominating companies of the whole regions and then controlling the exporting of meat, I think is very unlikely to occur. And then, of course, in the current landscape, each of the company are trying to make themselves positioning uniquely. So, for example, Shop Meats has being positioned itself as the first cultivated shrimp crustacean company. And there are actually very less number of companies that are working with crustacean species. And of course, for other companies, there are companies that are working with chicken, beef, pork, different type of animals to produce the cultivated meat. So everyone is trying to have a unique market positions throughout this process. So in the future, if how a company can dominate the market, this is something that I still not very sure of how I can share the opinions as of now. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Dr. Wong. We have another question from our attendee as well. Is it feasible to be used, the cultivated meat, is it feasible to be used as frozen or dried food, hence make it possible to be served during flight or even for military meals? Or if I may add to that, like meals that you can consume during like natural disaster or something?
Yes, thank you. I would say that this depends on how we develop the meats into the end product. So for example, a very simple illustration is how we can use the shrimp meat is also how we can use it for the cultivated shrimps as well. So if the shrimp meat itself can be freeze dry or frozen or prepared into a dry food, the cultivated shrimp can also be prepared in the same way. And to further elaborate on this, because one of the aim is to, like what one of the anonymous questions have raised up, the cloud kitchens. So the very long-term aim is to set up the productions machines in such a small scale that every kitchens in every house can actually produce this kind of cultivated meat at their home. So not only to use by household, for example, for military use, if we can bring these small machines and then it can actually supply the proteins to the soldiers, and not only for military. If we look at space exploratory, to set up the small machine in a spacecraft, it can actually provide the stream meats to the astronaut as well. Something very futuristic, but it's definitely in our minds already. Yeah.
This is actually very interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us. And we have another question. Okay, you're popular today, Dr. Wong. Just curious, is there any challenges you face related to lab-grown food regulations, maybe in Singapore?
In terms of regulations, I would say that the Singapore Food Agency has been very supportive, and they have evaluated the situations by individual company basis. So they will try to understand how the challenge of each of the production process and how we can justify whether the production process is well controlled and safe for the end product to be safe for the consumer. So instead of like challenges, I would say that we have been receiving quite a lot of support from the regulatory body to help to make the regulatory clearance faster. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is all of the questions that we have for today from our audience. And we still have 4 minutes left. I would actually offer to you if you do have any last statement to close the session.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say that thanks for having me, because like I say is that if the more people are aware of the technology, then the less misconception or the phobia that will be around. So hopefully this session has been informative for every one of you. And I also like to apologize if I have not been able to address some of your questions correctly. So thanks for your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wong Ming from Shiok Singapore. We wish to see more cooperation maybe between Singapore and Indonesia, so we can also taste the cultivated meats that we've been talking about, and we are very curious. And it has been a pleasure for me to moderate the session, and the session was interesting and very insightful. And I would also like to thank Dr. Wong Ming from Shiok and the Goethe-Institut Indonesian for inviting me and together with the Center for Digital Society and Engage Media as well. And as for the next session, the titled How Technology is Shaping Geopolitics will start in 30 minutes, and it features Wibke Dankena, who is a project manager for technology and geopolitics at a Berlin-based think tank. Then thank you very much for joining us. See you in another event. Thank you.